Okay, so we're going to catch up with Talie today.
And
And
then
you have,
I have a new video for Belle too.
oh, okay. Did you send that to me or we're just looking at the two from Talie today?
I think there's 3 links in the email. If not, I can grab it real fast.
Okay, well, let's start with, we can pause it and sort that out, but let me share the screen, at least with what I have. Okay. So you should see the YouTube. So there's two of them. You want to look at the one says January 10th and the other one says January 24th.
Yeah. So
So
the 10th
let's,
is the very first time I put her on the long reins on the small circle, like we had talked about in the meeting.
okay,
And then the 24th was Tuesday, and I had done one. So the 24th is the third session of tiny circles
on the long reins.
on the long reins. Yeah.
And then does this one have any riding in it or it's
Mm-hmm.
just the long reins?
It is both, although I ran really long on the long reins because I hadn't gotten to watch yet. So
Okay.
she got quite a workout on the long reins in this session.
Okay, so the first question is, did you notice, like I know when we looked at her, probably a year ago, she was stopping all the time on the long reins, and we kind of moved away from that and did more riding.
Yep.
So the first thing I look for on the long reins, and it's interesting when you tighten up the circle like this, it a lot of horses will lose forward because they lose engagement. And so horses that aren't very forward will sometimes do better on these smaller circles.
And
What-
she is doing that. I hadn't had any real problems with her stopping on the long reins on this circle.
Excellent. Excellent. And the pulling will happen as she starts to really let go, lengthening the top line, letting go through her neck. So the trick with having the circle this tight is to really be careful that you're not letting both reins get tight at the same time. And if they're curling their neck a lot, dropping the pole, you can err on the side of a little bit too light rather than a little bit too heavy.
I was trying to keep it that way so that the outside rein, if she did kind of jerk down and stretch real hard, just
Hmm.
slides.
Yeah.
I don't always get it perfect, but most of the time the outside rein just goes if she needs it.
Yeah, you can really see the front legs widening. And what I like is as she's slowing down, she's not shutting down, but you can still see how her hind legs aren't really square. She's a little bit, base narrow back there, especially between the hocks. And it's hard for her to keep that leg placement on this size circle to stay engaged and to stay level. But you're doing a really good job. And then let me just move it forward a little bit.
So it worked out to
See.
be about 15 minutes in each direction.
Yeah, I
So it
want
was
to kind of,
longer than I intended, but I think it may have been a good thing for the first session to really let her work it out.
yeah, I'm just gonna kind of go through there. You change direction, I think. Okay, so I just want to see the last few minutes on the same direction. Yeah, so she slowed down, but she never really shut down. She just got
Mm.
slower, but kept moving.
Yeah, and I could tell that there was a lot of like her thinking about it, like
Hmm.
sort of like, okay, well, what do I have to do here? Like, this is really different. And she never quite got out of the outside bend
That's
in this
fine.
first session.
Yeah, that just tells you that she really feels unstable through the hindquarters, and you can see that in the leg
Yeah.
movement. What I like seeing is the top of her pelvis. So if you look kind of across the top of her hindquarter, that's a lot steadier towards the end than when you started. And she's figuring out a little bit better braking with the hind legs, which is how she'll control her body weight. So as she slows down the speed, she's not falling forward quite as much. She's not great at it, but it's a good first session.
And there was lots of licking and chewing and like I said, like processing going on. So that
Hmm.
made me happy, even though it looked kind of wonky.
It's difficult for her
Yeah.
because this size circle, she really has to keep her hind legs underneath her. She has to work those oblique muscle groups more, which will help with her overall stability. That's part of why she's weak in the lateral movement of the legs and um and wobbly. And so the adduction and abduction that's going to occur on this size circle is really working some weak muscles. So then I'm just going to fast forward it a little bit to, where's the other direction? Okay. So this is early in the other direction. I just like to kind of get a glimpse of where they're starting each way and then where they're ending in the session.
So the right was definitely harder for her. And she kind of almost looked lame.
Yeah, because you can see in both directions, it's more so when she tracks right to the than left, but in both directions, she really almost crosses the midline with her hind legs. That
Yeah.
as she gets stronger, her hind legs should widen out a bit. Um, but it's like her muscle memory or her habit of movement is on the turning to really disengage the hindquarter rather than engage it. And you can see both hind legs land at a little bit of an oblique angle. And that's what I like about the tighter circle on the long reins is at least you're always engaging the hindquarters. When we have to have steering from the saddle and if we need to bend the neck for any reason, we're skating on disengagement.
Yeah.
So you
But despite
will.
that, she never stopped.
Exactly. And what you're seeing is her struggle with the mechanical weakness. So it's not a painful lameness, but what you're seeing, especially to the right, is just how underused, unstable that right hind leg is. Even out of all four legs, that's sort of the weakest link.
And it kind of
So
clunked there.
was she more bent to the outside this direction or more to on when you went the other way?
It was probably a little bit more extreme in this direction.
Yeah.
And of course, she was a little more stuck.
She
Uh,
stopped more often.
Still not really stopping, nothing like it used to be in the other sessions. I
Because
think she
she's
pooped twice, or that second time, I don't think she pooped, but she acted like she was going to. Um, but other than that, like I didn't have any problems. Some of me moving around is actually me trying to keep the lines organized, not really
yeah.
messing with her. It's
Yeah,
just
the lines
me
get
doing my
messy when you
juggle.
do the tiny circles. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, no, I really like this. So she's a little bit slower going to the right, which makes sense with her not trusting her right hind leg quite as much on the inside. But I love that she is kind of regular in her movement. And what you're seeing is the weakness in how she uses her hindquarter. And so you may even see what looks like a lame step here and there. It's not a painful lameness where she needs the vet, but what you're seeing is the mechanical lameness.
Yeah. And that definitely was happening. Um, I was pleased that it did get more minimal as we worked to the right. It never quite got as good as the left, but I didn't expect that based on where we started either.
Right. So then I'm just going to go up towards what looks like the end of the work to the right.
She may have stopped a couple times towards the end, which is probably part of why I went ahead and wrapped it up
Mm-hmm.
at that point.
Yeah, I would say 10 minutes each way. You'll
Yeah.
get her through some of her challenges without making it too much.
Yeah. I
But
was,
even
like I said, I was kind of glad we worked a little long just to really give her some time.
mhm,
But
that's looking a tiny bit more regular. She's still really hesitating on the right hind leg, struggling with it, but it's starting, her walk is starting to look a little bit more regular through, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, this is quite difficult for her, but beneficial. So did you feel a difference? This was her first session on the long reins on the small circle. And did you feel difference when you rode her?
I think so. I'm trying to remember that day. I think everybody was a little zippy that day.
Okay.
I think we'd had a weather change, and so everyone was a little Speedy Gonzalez. And I think that was what was interesting is I think when I get to the riding part is she did have more forward. It felt maybe a little more unstable in a way, but there
Mm-hmm.
was more movement and
She was happier to go
yeah.
forward without getting excited.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean it was taking a lot for me to juggle all
Yeah,
the
I mean,
motion, but
by the end of your work to the right, which it looks like it was about 15 minutes each way,
yeah.
um, she's really experimenting, like just there where she's rooting, she's starting to really want to let go of some of that holding in her neck. And it comes out a little awkward, it looks rude, but it's just her making a change. And she, every once in a while, has a little bit of an upward push with her front legs. And there, with the hind leg really underneath her, that's where she's tending to stop. Like she almost has to think through that little
Yeah.
different leg placement. Yeah. So then let me move forward a little bit to see some of the riding.
Yeah, it takes me a minute or two to get myself back organized. It was almost like she'd found a little bit more range of motion.
No, this is better. So as soon as you're on, she's got a tiny more control through her hindquarter. Like that's the best visual description I can give it. It's not super engaged, it's not super stable, but it's like she's got more purposeful steps with her hind end. Like she has
Yeah.
more control through that area of her body. I would play a little bit more with the neck straightness. She almost looks like she's too bent to the inside.
Okay. What I
So,
noticed is to get her head to drop, I need more right rein, I think it is.
yes, so tracking left, it's a little hard to see at this distance whether you're keeping her on the circle with the left rein, which is why she's bending her neck, or if she's falling on her left shoulder, which is why she's bending her neck.
It
So,
may have
in
been
other
some of
words,
both because I
okay,
think the last thing we were working on before we added the circles, the tiny circles on the long reins, was working on a circle.
right. So she's the type of horse like we discussed in the group with the horse that was very straight through the hocks. She's the type of horse, because of the difficulty she has engaging and stabilizing her hindquarter, that you want to use the circle to help her stay engaged and stay stable through the hindquarter, but only as much turn as you can get with the neck straight.
Yeah.
She's one that I would try to get away, whether she's bending her neck or you are, doesn't matter. You just want to use more outside rein. Like on that
Okay.
turn,
Yeah.
the neck should be a lot straighter. So you want
Okay.
to look right at the pole. You're going to turn her from your seat as if you're walking where you want to go. And so you keep her on a constant turn. You can alternate left and right, but you're always on some degree of a turn, but the steering is not going to be accurate or easy.
Yeah.
So with her, you're trying to balance how much can we turn with the neck absolutely straight while I'm on your back. There's other horses where the steering would be more important, because it's a different, kind of a little different issue the horse has.
Yeah.
When you see this kind of instability and struggle with the hindquarter, and especially how her legs kind of land a little bit oblique, they don't land vertical.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's where I want to avoid bending the neck, because bending the neck is going to adduct the hind leg, but it's going to land oblique.
Yeah.
Straightening the neck on a turn is going to help the legs become more square
Yeah.
and wider, which is what she needs.
Yeah.
So I would say you need the circle to keep the engagement, but the circle doesn't have to be a perfect shape. It doesn't have to be, she can fall in on one part and she can bow out on the other part,
Yeah.
but you're only going to keep asking for turns, and you could alternate left and right to make it a little easier for her. Um, but you're only going to turn as much as is possible with the neck straight.
Okay.
So I would focus a little bit more on looking at her pole and kind of letting her turn, because also with a weak hindquarter, a lot of times they will turn because they're falling to the inside,
Yeah. Yeah. That
right?
was happening.
So we don't really have to force the turn too much, especially if we're not picky about the precision of the circle. We don't need a precise path of travel in this case, but you do need a precise midline,
Okay.
right? And for different reasons, we might need more adduction or a precise path of travel to help a horse make a change that's maybe too tight or too restricted muscularly.
Mm-hmm.
But in her case, where you have this looseness and this kind of lack of width between the legs, lack of vertical squareness of the legs, that's where the midline, and it always goes with a noodly midline, right? So
Yeah.
those are the horses that I go, the turn is secondary to the internal straight line from the pole to my seat bones.
Okay.
Okay. But she's more forward and she's got better control over her forward. So she's not bouncing between stopping and rushing and stopping and rushing.
Yeah.
She's got a steadier pace, and it's not the actual speed. Like there, I would not have worried about the turn. I would have used the outside rein,
Okay.
right? So you can use a little bit of inside rein to help the turn, but I would avoid bending the neck. And you've got a fence line, so she's going to
Yeah.
hit the fence line and turn.
Yeah.
It's like you can let her kind of run into the fence line if she's trying to escape through the shoulder and not making the turn. Yeah. And the tricky part is, as soon as we think about steering, we tend to get into too much rein or too
Yeah.
much bending. That's the
Yeah.
tricky part for the rider. So if you think in terms of internal straight midline first, turn second, in that order, then you're going to keep balancing how much can I turn with the midline
Okay.
straight and stable.
Yeah.
And yes, you need the turns, but what you'll find, the less she bends her neck, I think the long rein tight circles will help her stabilize that hindquarter before you get on.
Yeah.
And then what you'll find is if you keep the neck straight or the full midline straight as a priority, the steering will get easier and easier. And you really won't have to bend her neck. But little by little, as she gets more stable and more engaged, the steering will become more accurate.
Okay.
Okay. But she's like, every time she bends her neck, her whole hindquarter fishtails out of
Yes.
control.
I feel like the whole boat like folds in half all of a sudden. I'm
Absolutely.
like,
Yeah,
"Bleh."
and that's the exact type of horse. It's not all horses, but it's almost all gaited horses, which she is.
Yeah.
They almost have this genetic sort of hypermobility, double jointedness. And so those are the ones where stabilizing the midline is a little more of a priority, which is why we started with just passenger. Don't even
Yeah.
try to steer because she was too unstable.
Yeah.
So the advancement is, and what the small circles on the long range should help you with, is now we're saying very gently, we're going to steer with a straight midline. And that should also help her stay out of extension,
Yeah.
right? So you should get more lengthening, less dropping of the pole at the same time that the steering gets easier and more accurate. But stabilizing the midline internally is the key to everything for her. And
Yeah.
that's what we did as a like sort of passenger riding. So now we want to do that, gently introducing some degree of a turn to just sort of start the idea of steering and circling.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes. I think somewhere in here I do change direction. Maybe not. Maybe we just wandered in that
Okay.
direction for this one.
So now let's look at the next one.
So we had quite a bit of company. So
Okay,
a bunch of
so this
people.
one, the 10th was the last one. And
The
this
10th was the
one,
very first time. And so this is the 24th. So this is the third session on the long reins with her.
okay, so let's sort of see where she's starting.
I've been really happy with how fast she's making changes.
This has been these smaller circles, and you can even mix up if she starts getting stuck. The thing I was going to recommend is that you can, if she loses forward, you can stay this close, stay this accurate. But if you start walking right there along the fence line, you can use the fence line for your straight lines and then mix up straight lines and small circles and straight lines and small circles. If she can stay on this tight of a circle without losing forward both directions, then I would say do more of that, especially if it's just 10 minutes each way as her warm up for riding.
Yeah, we haven't had a problem with losing forward at all.
Yeah, great. And she's
And
going
there
to be
was
bent to the outside for a little while.
there's a lot of tail movement today. Well, and pooping, of course, but she was flipping her tail a lot, which is kind of unlike her, especially it's winter. There's definitely no bugs.
So
Um,
kind of flipping it side to
yeah, and
side
just
slowly.
yeah, just sort of
Mhm.
every now and then she was just like moving it around.
Yeah.
Um,
So those are her back muscles kind of waking up and starting to work. And that's what I like about the small circles, even if you're doing intermittent straight lines and small circles and straight lines and small circles, is the circles add a lot of stability to a minimal amount of engagement very quickly if they're level on this size circle, which is what the long reins help with.
yeah,
And she's already landing less oblique, right? So her legs are starting to get more vertical as she comes around the circle and widening a little bit. It's a big deal. The tail flipping is telling you you're getting into those deeper back muscles, that she's starting to work her back muscles differently.
yeah,
When we watch her legs, she's still struggling with the engagement and the stability, but there's a big improvement.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Her
I would
neck is
say,
a lot more level. She's spending a lot less time with her neck above the withers, and she's stretching down in this session, which she was not able to do in the first session. She's also not quite as badly bent to the outside.
yeah, yeah, the outside bend is getting better, and they're always bent to the outside until the hindquarter really stabilizes and starts to do what it should be doing, controlling the
Yeah,
movement. But what I like seeing is as she's coming around the circle, like this left hind leg on the inside is not going towards the midline. It's starting to track straight. And you can see that's a strain on her joints, her muscles. It's a
yeah,
new use for the leg. So it's a little bit awkward and weak for her, but she's doing it. Yeah, she's starting to get, again, more control with that leg. But you can see as she comes around the circle compared to even the last video, her hind legs are a little bit wider. and they're not landing at such an angle on the outside of the hoof. They're starting
Yeah.
to straighten up a little bit and become more vertical.
Yeah. So this is just 3 sessions,
That's
you know,
awesome.
with a full week in between each session. So the other funny thing that's happening is when I turn her out, I haven't had Belle, I haven't had both of them in the arena because there have been people with me most of the time. And when I turn her out, it takes her the entire time that I'm working with Belle to make it all the way back to the other end of the field to the hay. And she's not eating on the way. So like she's like wandering really slowly back across the field. And it's like I can
Interesting.
tell she's like, whoa. And she seems to be a little bit more interested in me catching her. Not that she's given me problems in
Mm-hmm.
forever, but there just seems to be a little bit of a shift where she's like,
Yeah, and she's even starting, like just there, those last couple of steps, she's starting to figure out that her front legs can push upward, that they don't have to just propel her by pushing backwards. And that's a natural transition that the horses discover as the back and the hindquarter get more stable. When the hindquarter has a minimal amount of engagement, then the front legs just start to lighten up and it changes. Like, do you see there where the left front starts to have a little more upward force rather than kind of pushing her forward in a backwards direction?
yeah,
So the stride actually gets a little shorter, but the direction of the force of the leg is changing from backwards to an upward push. Yeah, it's pretty good. She keeps doing it in the same spot on the circle. But her hind leg is staying much better underneath her. She's getting more comfortable. She's still like the legs are landing oblique behind, but less so than
yeah,
the other video we looked at. Okay, so that's the end of 10 minutes this
yeah.
way. Oh, good. Then
And
we'll
now we
just look
flip
at the
around.
change of direction. We'll see the beginning the other way. Arena traffic.
Ugh. There were 3 people in there.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa,
That's
okay.
when it's good that you're working on a small circle. You don't get
Yeah.
in
I was like, I
anybody's
just
way.
need a corner. I'm like, can I
Yeah.
just have a little corner, please? I'm like, I just need to set the camera up so I can see myself. That's all I need to do. So definitely not as bad looking.
Yes, it doesn't look as lame. It still looks awkward. She's struggling a little more with the right hind than the left hind, but definitely more comfortable than the video from the 10th. Yeah, she's just got more to figure out.
Yeah. But again, there's more neck stretching than there was in the last time. She's licking and chewing a lot.
Yeah. And you can see very gradually, like even on the change of direction, she gets a little narrow again. Her legs get too close to the midline. And then she starts to work it out. So eventually, I would stick to 10 minutes each way. This is quite a difficult exercise for her. 10 minutes each way as your warm up, and then more of your time riding. As she gets stronger and better at this, I would do 10 minutes to the left to start with and give her an extra 5 minutes to the right. So I
Mhm.
would do like 10 left, 15 right, and then ride.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I
but
may have
she's,
even left her to the right a hair longer anyway, because I'm beginning to figure out when the horses are in that spot where they're like making some changes, and it's like I don't want to interrupt you because
yeah,
you're
you're,
unraveling some stuff. And
or you're
so
just getting the hang of it.
I know,
Yeah,
and I'm like, wait a minute, I don't think it's a good time to stop yet. So I think she may have even gotten a few more minutes to the right
yeah.
because of that.
Like just there, she starts to widen out. She starts to reach forward with a straighter right hind leg, straighter left hind leg. And you can see it's like she doesn't have the muscle support for it as well as the coordination. It's all a little bit new. But yeah,
But she's
she's,
still trying, and that's what's so cool is she's not stopping at all.
yeah. Oops. So let me just go towards the end to the right. So is she more forward by the third session? I went too far. Let me go back a little bit.
Yeah. It's like smoothing out.
So she didn't stop
It's
as
not really
much,
impulsive forward.
even towards the end of the 10 minutes to the right, she's not stopping as much, correct?
Not really, no.
Great, because the forwardness and the steadiness of pace, when they're really struggling with using their back and hindquarter, they bounce between I won't go forward and rushing forward.
Yeah.
As soon as they're in better control, both with the coordination of the use of the hindquarter and back, as well as some muscle strength, you get a much steadier pace.
I think that might be one of the times she did get a little bit stuck, but
Okay. But it wasn't bad.
no, and that's the thing is it kind of like Othello a couple weeks ago that we looked at, like it's not taking much at all. So I felt like it was more indicative of the changes she was making than like I can't do this. More
Yeah.
like,
And
you
she's
know,
struggling with her right hind going through a really healthy, good use, a good range of motion. She's struggling with it, and you see she's struggling with it, but she can do it. Oh, and that's the end.
yeah.
So it looked a little bit improved from the beginning of the 10 minutes to the right to the end, but that's going to be where she probably needs some extra help.
Okay. So should I go ahead and start doing
No,
15-ish or leave her at 10 for now?
let's see how she looks under saddle.
Thankfully,
Because
everybody
under
left the arena.
saddle, the thing you have under saddle is your weight. Now, one thing I'm going to correct right away is you're looking ahead of her. Your head is not looking
Okay.
at her pole, and that
Okay.
will never help you become level. You need to look at her pole and straighten the neck, and that
Okay.
alone can be part of why we end up with too much neck bend.
Okay.
So I would look right, like your line of vision is right here to the pole, feeling your seat bones. The benefit of the riding for her right now is that she has to strengthen the muscle, but she doesn't have to be quite as engaged as she does on the tiny circles. So she can fall forward more. Um, that's why the turn is secondary to the internal straightness and stability. So like
Yeah.
there you need more right rein.
Okay.
And if you're looking at where you're going, it creates a literal blind spot for noticing that the horse's neck is bending because your neck is bending. And so when they have trouble on a direction, left or right, and if you to the right, if you have no steering and you just have to kind of use the whole arena under saddle, I would do that. To the
Okay.
left, you can try asking for circles. But what you want to do, what you can do when you're riding is look at the pole, keep the pole dead centered to your seat bones. That's number one, to stabilize her body and maintain as much. Every time you bend the neck, it's going to cause the legs to move laterally as well as the back to become unlevel. So the straighter the neck, like we looked at on the ground, even when you have the long reins keeping the hindquarters level, her legs are still moving.
Yeah.
They're not vertical, they're landing oblique. And that's what you want to get. That's why the riding is more important for her, and we're keeping the long range short. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So that's why also the circles or the turns under saddle are secondary to the midline being dead straight. And I don't think she's going to need a neck bend to get out of extension anymore. I think you're at the
Yeah.
point
This
where
is
if,
very different from 2 weeks ago.
yeah, so
Like,
like there you need more outside rein. And if you were looking at the pole, you would see it. So, and even there, more outside rein, more outside
okay.
rein, more outside rein, more outside rein. And I know you struggle with feeling level on her. So the more you look at the neck, and it should look like a broomstick between her pole and where your seat bones are, right between the moving shoulder blades. And so when you look at it, what tends to happen is then we feel and can see with our minds where the back is and what's going on under our seat bones. It kind of wakes up the feel of your seat by just focusing on that neck alignment. and you're in an enclosed space with a fence
Yeah.
line. You don't need to look where you're going. So, so then once you have that between her and you, which is the internal part of the equation, then if you can get her to carry that on any degree of a turn or a circle, then you're actually helping the engagement more. But
Okay.
if with her, when you stay on the circle, and if the neck bend goes on too long, do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like we needed the circle to help her stay in long and low, but she won't stay out of extension if we keep bending her neck
Yeah.
because it's making her unstable. So you want to kind of hold the neck bending in reserve with a wiggly horse like her and build your circles to be gradually more and more and more accurate with a very accurate internal straight line of force through her midline. And I think if you really kept the neck stable through the reins, she's going to circle for you. And I think the straighter the neck during the turn is where she's going to quit resorting into dropping her back. I think that's where you're going to fully overcome her need to go into extension, lifting her head, dropping her back, because she's
Cool.
so close. Like if
Yeah.
you supported the neck a tiny bit more, I think she would still follow your seat. She's stable enough that you can get some steering from your seat. You really don't need the reins for steering, which also means now we can avoid bending the neck anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that will start to help the hind legs be more vertical and land less at an angle, oblique on the outside of the hoof wall.
Cool. I think at some point we do change and go
Yeah, I
right.
was gonna try to see, and she may be the one bending her neck. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it is
It's,
a combination of both. Part of it is also me trying to stay in the camera range.
yeah. And
So,
so if you, and if you need to steer to stay in the camera, fine. Oh, there we go. Yes, we're going the other way. You can do that, but what you want to do is within even where this camera is, you have almost half the arena, right? You've got a full
yeah.
quarter of this arena. You can probably get her to turn within that quarter of the arena without having to bend the neck too much and
I'm
more.
probably also not doing enough soon enough. So then she gets a little too far and I'm like, "Oh crap, we need
So
to swing
like
back
right
around."
there is a good example where she turned too quick. That's
Yeah.
fine. Keep the neck straight. Don't fight the turn.
Yeah.
If she doesn't turn, keep asking for the turn, but bend the neck as the kind of last resort, like there where you
Yeah.
go out of camera. You could go, okay, now I need to bend the neck just to stay in camera,
Yeah.
right? And then try to get back to a straight neck as quickly as you can. And this direction, your head is a little bit straighter. It's a little bit better keeping in tune with where her neck is. And it's probably because it's the harder direction to ride.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good. So she's still gonna like turn too much or not turn enough. But that's where I said keep turning,
Yeah.
ask for the turn. You can alternate left and right the whole time, or you can do right, 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 left, 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 doesn't matter. Um, but you want to really get more. I think the long reins are doing the job of asking for more engagement, which is the only purpose of playing with a neck bend under saddle. Um, so when you're under saddle, your main focus is on her internal stability, which is the midline and the hindquarter and back. Getting some of that rocking and twisting and wiggling out of her movement.
Yeah.
And the turn will facilitate that, but not if we turn at the expense of
Yeah.
the straight midline too
Yeah.
much.
And
Yeah. And
I'm really not controlling her circle clearly because we're making all sorts of various size circles and they move around a lot. So,
which is perfect.
Yeah, it's very minimal. Just an effort to keep going in the same direction is really, and stay in camera range was really my only goal.
Yeah.
So,
So that is putting the steering second.
yeah,
But you need to be a whole lot more active on the reins. And because she's wiggly, you really can't afford to look where you're going at all. Like it's a very quick play between the left and right rein, because what you're trying to do is get her not to move her pole or her
yeah,
neck.
yeah.
So it's very rapid, very quick. If she wants a longer neck, you can do that all the way back on the buckle. If she lifts her head, take a shorter rein, but you're really alternating between the left and right rein. And even though it's fast, that's what she needs in order to stabilize her head and neck in front of her back. Yeah, and I think she will have steering while you do that. So that's good. Even though the neck is going up and she's resorting to extension a little bit, you're not going into the bend. You're working with the straightness, which I know ultimately will help her stay out of extension.
Yeah.
Yep, that must
Well,
be the end of the ride.
I think that's where we stopped.
Okay. Excellent.
Yeah,
All
I'm
right.
super happy with the changes. Like you said, like this is the fastest she's changed in a really long time, forever. I don't know.
A big improvement, a
Yeah.
big improvement. And so the small circles on the long reins will gradually get easier and easier for her. But I would keep it to 10 minutes each way until she starts to straighten out her neck
Okay.
and loses the outside bend, that she's no longer stopping at all. And hopefully that she starts to do those small circles with her neck long, whether it's long and level or long and low, straight and long. Then I would look at increasing the time first on the right direction.
Okay.
But
Cool.
let her stick. It's pretty difficult for her. So just let her stick with 10 minutes each way as you're riding warm up until she starts to take the outside bend out of her neck.
Okay.
Then increase it because it's a challenge for her, but it's a good warm up. And then when you ride, if you're reinforcing that stable midline and getting as much of a turn as you kind of can, then the two will start to come together.
Okay.
One will help the other.
Yeah.
But
Cool.
I think the bigger part of the ride, it's easier for her if you're not accurate on the steering, but you are accurate with stabilizing the midline.
Yeah.
And that's just a gentler way to get where we want to go. And your body weight will help a lot
Yeah.
with her building the muscle.
Yeah. Cool.
Questions?
No, not for her. Do you want to look at Belle real quick?
Oh, okay. Let me pause it. Hang on. Okay, so we are back. Let me share the screen. Okay, I think it's already playing.
So we had said that we were not doing long range tiny circles with her. And the last time
Right.
the issue was her stopping and me not being able to keep asking her to go forward. So not really having any problems with stopping anymore.
Oh, good. Under saddle or
Under
okay, so
saddle, yeah.
she's not doing the long reins at
Mm-mm.
all. And
No.
I don't think she's ready yet because
Okay.
you can see right away it's the same issue as Talie, where her legs land kind of oblique. You see that?
Yeah.
And so that's where it comes from chronic, the chronic posture of extension, right? And for Belle, we will get to the small circles on the long reins, but I'd like to see her be able to, or her neck is one of her biggest challenges. All that strength and holding in the shoulders and the neck. And so with her, you can go in and out of sort of the idea of steering, not steering, right?
I am
You,
mostly not steering with her right now. The whole
That's
the whole point that I've been working on is just keeping her neck straight so we can get it
yes.
long. Yeah.
Yes. And you still may need to have to bend her to get her out of extension. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if she gets excited or she gets distracted, she's one that you go, okay, I have to take a little bit of a bend on a turn. So that exercise where we were sort of using a figure eight, but we were bending and turning through the rain, you could do that with her if she isn't even attempting to lengthen her neck.
Yeah.
Or if the fear energy kind of escalates and she gets distracted, you
Yeah.
could go to that figure eight with the inside rein and a little bit of neck bend. As soon as she starts to, which she's already doing early in this ride, she's already trying to lengthen the neck. I would still stick with, you could suggest a turn, right? But I would say putting her on a path of travel isn't going to help her stay in that change of posture.
That's kind of what I felt about it, other than
Hmm.
trying to stay in the camera
Yeah.
again. But beyond
Yes.
that, like, she's giving me so much long and low without a path of travel right now that I wasn't even worried about it.
Yes. And I
Like,
would, she's almost getting good at it because
yeah,
she's attempting very early in the ride to just lengthen the top line. As soon as she falls, where she fully lets go of that shortening contraction through her top line, you see she kind of falls forward and then she pops back up.
yeah,
So at this point, I would just watch the pole, keep the neck in line with your seat bones, and let her wander.
yeah,
And like you said, for the video, for the sake of the video, take one rein, steer as needed. If that's not enough, if she, for some reason, quits attempting to lengthen the neck, then I might put in a few bends here and there just to say, hey, knock it off. We're not going to spend 10 minutes for you to get
yeah,
there,
yeah,
right? But if she's doing what she's doing in this video, where she's sort of like gently attempting to find that length, then just focus on level through your seat bones and the pole straight to your seat bones. So that's where, think of your pelvis as the bowl of water, reduce the sloshing, keep the
yeah,
water quiet, and line up the neck. And for her right now, she's it's working for her because she's trying, she's paying attention, she's looking for it, but she still is not quite stable. When she really lets go of her neck, she's like, oh, I can't hold that.
yeah,
Right. So focus more and more on the internal detail. How quiet can you get your seat? How straight can you get that neck?
yeah,
Right. And she's not speeding up and she's not stopping. So that's a huge improvement in the muscle use. But she can't hold that sort of change in posture because she's disengaging a bit. She's not really
yeah.
square behind. She's a little weak and wobbly still in the hindquarters. But I think if we put her on circles to ask for more, I think she would just resort back into that strong neck at this point.
Yeah.
I think you're
Yeah.
maybe a couple of weeks away from being able to either try steering a little bit going, and you could actually start with attempts right now in your rides, like right there coming through the corner as she's on the rail. You could set her up and say, could you turn left with your neck straight? And if she completely blows through you and hugs the rail, you go, okay, not time yet,
Yeah.
right? But if you turn your seat, she may do it without the reins, or you may be able to do it keeping the neck straight with a little bit of inside rein balanced with the outside rein.
I feel like I have so much more horse in front of me.
Yeah,
Like, it's
yeah.
insane. Like, being up there, like, this doesn't look like much. Like, it's almost a little disappointing to watch the video in a way because her
It
neck is
feels, yeah,
so much further away from me and so much longer than it used to be that it's dramatic in the saddle.
yeah. It feels like it's 10 feet longer.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I don't feel like I'm falling down. Like we don't feel like we're falling down a hill when she does that, which is,
Yes.
years ago and on Storm too. Like that's how it used to feel. It's like they'd put their neck down. It was like, whoa, we're going to fall over. And no, it doesn't feel like that at all.
And that's what the steadiness of pace tells you. It doesn't matter if it's a slow, steady pace or a quick, steady pace. The lack of halt and rushing tells you that when they let go of the neck, they can control their body somewhat through the back and the hindquarter. So that tells you you have enough engagement for now, right? It's more of, can she transfer that stability from the front end to the hind end? And can she stabilize her body? It's more of a maybe a muscle issue where she's not strong enough in the hindquarter or back to really stabilize her body when she lets go of that big, strong neck.
Yeah.
So
It was
that's
also
where,
really windy
uh,
and she's not reacting at all.
excellent. Yeah, so the circles, like where Talie needs the circles under saddle and the circles on the long reins to kind of get engaged. Where Belle isn't, she isn't super engaged, but the way she's attempting to keep finding length through her neck tells you it's enough for her right now, that you don't need to increase the engagement, which would be the tiny circles or steering under saddle, to help her make that shift from overusing
Yeah.
her front end to using her back and hindquarters. She's
Yeah.
kind of getting it. So it's a matter of detail. It's really, you could attempt steering, like right there, you could say, hey, could we turn right with a straight neck or left? And if you asked for right and she went left, I go, okay, no big deal. I'll try again later, right? Because the thing you don't want to interrupt is using level and straight to gain the length,
Yeah.
right? And it's working. She's just
Yeah.
not very good at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and her neck in general looks longer the whole ride. So I
Yeah.
see what you're talking about, that
Yeah.
she's just not so contracted.
Yeah.
She's starting to look like she has slightly different conformation, like she has a little bit longer neck than what she used to look like.
And her butt doesn't look so flat on top anymore
Yeah,
because she was so rotated. She was just real flat up on the top of her
across the
hindquarter.
croup. Yep,
Yeah.
yep. No, it's coming together. It's a matter of you're going to be very, very busy with just that level, straight alignment through her back and her neck. And then as she lets go of her neck, I like how you're keeping a light contact on the rein. You don't want, when she starts to let go of her neck, I would keep the same amount of feel on the reins as when her neck is short. So no matter the length of rein, I wouldn't let them get tight or loose.
Okay.
So a little bit more contact when she goes to lengthen. She might like that little bit more contact rather than a loose rein to feel like she can trust it.
I'll play around with that.
Okay. So like if we said 10 is pulling and slack in the rein is a 1, maybe like a 3, a 4, or a 5 feel so that it's like a hand holding feel without any
Yeah.
pulling and without any slack. If she
Yeah.
pulls, you lengthen the rein. If she lifts her head up, you shorten the rein, but only to keep a more consistent feel on the reins. And that may help her feel like her neck is stable enough that she doesn't have to keep shortening the muscles. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It may help her hold that length through her top line a little bit easier. But yeah, that's pretty good. So I'm going to kind of jump to the end. Oops, I don't know what I did. I don't want that. Let me go a little farther. I just want to sort of see the end where because you're on a good track. I wouldn't change anything with her yet, and I want to see how she's doing closer to the end of the ride. So this is like the last 5 minutes. Yeah, that's the result I would be hoping to see.
Yeah.
And she'll play with her speed a little, but it shouldn't be shut down or rushing. But she's starting. And again, it's a good exercise for you to just, you have nothing else to think about except the detail of
Yeah.
the levelness of the back and the alignment of the neck. And you'll get better and better with your body weight and your rein use to keep supporting that. Yeah, very good. So she's trusting more and more her back and hindquarter and not having to resort to her neck tightening and shortening so quickly. She's still in that in-between stage where she doesn't fully trust it.
Yeah.
So if you add steering in right now, it would help her stay more engaged, which could help her change that posture sooner. But I think with her, she's got enough control and engagement through her hindquarter that I would tend not to disturb it. This is more of a muscle issue than a leg placement issue, which is Talie's is more of a leg placement issue and stability issue,
Yeah.
where Belle's muscles almost get in her way.
Yeah. I feel like if I were to add turns with her, I would lose
I think it would
something here.
cause her to tighten up again too
Yeah,
much.
and I think it would distract me some. I'd
Hmm.
get too focused on that and lose the focus on everything else. So I'm I'm happier to just let her wander and just keep going, keep just refocus on balance, balance, balance,
Yeah. So this is very good. That's what I'd like to see at the beginning of the ride, where she is now, where she's almost not shortening her neck at all. And I think if you kept a more consistent rein contact,
Okay.
I think she'll very soon, within a few rides, maybe a half dozen rides, she'll be starting her ride more like that,
There. Yeah.
right? Rather than up, down so fast, or the big dramatic difference between shortening and lengthening. She'll start to kind of hold a longer and longer neck all the time.
Yeah.
And right
What
there where you drop her a little with the reins, I think if you kept the contact, I think she
yeah.
might hold that length a little bit longer. Just a feeling, so try it out.
Yeah, I'll test that. It's funny when I get on her, the first thing she does is put her head down and
Yeah,
not move.
yeah,
Like she just stands there and puts her head down, which is good because I like get myself all settled and make sure my skirt is covering me so I'm warm.
yeah,
And
because with her
yeah,
neck longer in motion, she's quite slow and quite careful. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
So that's going to be not much faster than halt, where she can really trust to change that use of her front end stabilizing. Yeah. So by the end of the ride, you're getting better consistency of length, and she's
yeah,
starting to like the feeling of it. Yeah. So right here at the end, this little bit that we're looking at, that would be where I'd want to see her start. So what should happen is if we're on track, like right now, maybe it takes her 15 minutes to kind of get there, or maybe it even takes the whole, what do you have, 36 minutes on video, and we're at 34. So maybe it's only the last 5 minutes. She's starting to trust that postural change like this. I want to see that it'll go from the last 5 minutes to maybe the last 15, 20 minutes. Then it'll be maybe at the midway mark of your ride, right? Then it'll start to be after the first quarter of your time. And then it'll start to be what you get coming off the mounting block.
yeah,
And I wouldn't change up what we're doing until this posture here and this kind of consistency was showing up at least by the middle of the ride and
yeah.
lasting the whole second part of the ride.
Okay.
And right now she's just kind of pulling it together by in the last 5 minutes of the ride, what I would like to see. So
Okay.
you're on the right track. It is working because we're not, last time we didn't even get the last 5 minutes of the ride. We only got steps here and there.
Yeah.
So it's a big improvement that towards the end of the ride, she's holding that change of posture for consistently,
Yeah.
right? That's a big deal.
Yeah.
And then what you're looking for is that consistency in the change of posture to come earlier in the ride and last longer, percentage wise
Yeah.
in the ride. But yeah, that's pretty good. I wouldn't change anything with her. I would just keep chugging.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't add groundwork yet. I think this
Okay.
is where you're going to get the easiest change for her. Because she's a strong horse, where Tally's a weak horse. The
Yeah, that's true.
groundwork can really help, where Belle is strong, but she's just strong on the front end. She's not really strong on the hind end. So getting her to not use the strength she has, we have to be just very encouraging and not have to give too many aids like for steering or speed adjustments. You
Yeah.
just want to keep saying, this is the posture we want. This is the posture we want.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even when she gets distracted, you're not really having to bend her or turn her. She's coming
Mm-mm.
back.
No, she hasn't given me any behavior like that in a really long time. And despite the fact that there have been some real windy days
Yeah, and cold.
and yeah, it's been people in the arena. I think there's somebody in the other end of the arena right
Hmm.
now, and neither one of them care. They're very focused and um yeah, I'm very, very pleased with the changes they've made. Like
Yes.
I I don't want to say I never thought we'd get here, but I'm not sure that I knew,
Yeah.
that it would
No, and
all come together.
the better it gets, the better it gets. And with both
Mhm.
of these girls, you're getting close to that threshold where the body starts to build up faster. The riding starts to get a lot easier, and it's not quite so tedious to work through every single little change. And you won't have to change strategies as often, right? So I think with Belle, just stay on track with what you're doing and keep finding that length and the consistency of length in motion without steering too much.
Yeah,
And then she will leapfrog forward from there. Where Talie, we're trying to build the engagement and stability of the back and hindquarter. That's why she needs some kind of turn when you're in the saddle. Do
yeah,
you know what I mean? Without the
yeah,
turn, when we let her wander, there's just too much instability. She can't quite pull it together like Belle can.
yeah. I feel like Belle is she's more able to trust herself and she's trusting the process in a way that she didn't.
That's what I mean, that she has
Yeah,
more muscular strength, even though it's at the wrong end of her body. She has more muscular strength and a lot more self-control over her movement.
yeah,
When they lack stability and self-control, which is Tally, that's where, okay, we're going to have to add in some steering to help this along because the steering is part of helping the stability.
yeah,
Doesn't have to be perfect steering, but we can't just let her wander like you can with a horse that has more self-control.
yeah.
All righty.
Thank you. This was good.
Yeah, and they're all doing great. So I don't think we changed anything too much, but thanks for doing the video with the tiny circles on the long reins.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, they're doing rocking along. So I'll probably wait
Excellent.
another couple weeks before I do videos again.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, because
Cool.
I would say with both of them, you've got at least 2 weeks before I would change anything you're doing.
Okay.
At least 2 weeks. Because you're riding
Once a week.
oh, once a week, I would say maybe 3 or 4 weeks then. I mean,
Okay.
you're going to be good to go for,
So I'll
um,
aim for the end of February again. Try and get another video.
yes, yes. Let's do a check-in after 3 or 4 weeks. Because right now, if you're only riding them once a week, in my mind, I would think 4 to 6 rides, they would start to be at a point where you're maybe looking at altering the training strategy or moving them along. So
Okay.
when we only ride once a week, that takes
Yeah.
a long time. But
Yeah.
but they're doing great, and you're getting a lot of progress. Like with Talie, especially between the 10th and the 24th, was a really nice improvement.
That's a significant change for 3 sessions.
Yeah.
I mean, for that to be the third session.
Yeah, and that's what I liked about tightening up the circle on the long reins. Even if they're struggling with it, I find it helps them along really fast.
Cool. Very good.
All righty, my dear.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay.